Hello.
What up?
We're live. Can everybody hear me? I want to make sure because I've been struggling lately with my damn audio. Last Corn Stars episode.
Fine now.
Okay. Last Corn Stars episode, I didn't have the input set to the interface. I had it set to the mic, the computer mic, so I sounded like I was across the room because I pretty much am from the computer. So that was frustrating because this whole time I heard it fine in my headphones because the audio is coming through that. Like I'm hearing it through the interface. It's just not being picked up through the interface. So it was a whole thing. I didn't even realize it was what it was until I had finished that episode and went to upload it the next morning. So I was pretty irritated that I did that. And then we had the issue with Wyman when he was here. And the interface again, like figuring out the channels and mono and stereo and stuff. And Phil is here. There he is.
You know, it wouldn't be me with Bill unless I was late.
Fair.
That's right.
Fair.
I literally gave myself ample time to get here, and the computer wouldn't turn on. And I realized that I left it in sleep, and it was just that dead.
Well, so, everyone's just having their own problems.
What happened?
I don't know. At first, Bill was, before we kicked it live, Bill was like, "You're really quiet." And I'm like, "Here we go again. I'm going to have audio problems, and Chris Sexton's going to have to be my hero once again." But fortunately, I think we got it figured out.
Good enough. Good enough.
Well, and I listened to that Corn Stars today on my commute, and I mean, you're far away, but you could still understand.
It wasn't horrible, but it was still just frustrating because this entire time I thought it was fine. And then I go back and I'm like, damn it.
Well, I'm glad that Chris got his cut on, you know? Man, looking at the group chat and people saying how Bill and I look alike, no.
It's a hell of a compliment.
It is.
What?
Bill's beard is 10 times more triumphant than mine.
He's a triumphant guy.
He is. He's a triumphant ginger bastard. I love him.
Well, it's because it looks like you actually care and make yours nice and
actually do something to
evenness.
I have to, otherwise I get shunned and pitchforked.
Anna Maria probably doesn't put up with any of that.
No, she does not. She's not.
See.
I get beaten to submission.
Groomed.
Yeah. And I'm like, fine.
Man, Katie sounds really, really good. Is she on Jake's mic?
Yeah, she is.
That's fantastic. Why is she on camera?
That mic is freaking amazing. It's like a $20 Behringer, and that thing beats like just about any other mic I've ever used, including this Shure that I'm using right now.
Send me the link because I need a new one. I'm using the freaking laptop right now because my other one took a shit.
I don't see. The problem is I can't find these on Amazon anymore. I don't know if they just stopped making them. Like they were so good and so cheap that everyone bought them, and now you can't find them anywhere or what. But that thing is freaking incredible.
Yeah, definitely.
But we'll hunt one down, and I'll if I can hunt some, I'll grab us some.
Good, excellent. So I'm assuming I missed sponsors.
No, you haven't actually.
Excellent.
I was complaining about my interface with Corn Stars last week.
Take it away.
So this is episode 115 of Snakes and Stogies, which is brought to you by the fine people at BlackBoxCages.com. You need a cage, you need a rack, hit them up. They will not disappoint. We talked about it last week. Phil loves his. He just got
indubitably.
Bill just got some of his stuff too when we were in Marietta. Have you got your setup and everything?
I haven't. It's for the same reason that Lizard Brain was delayed a little bit. I was traveling for work, so this is my first official day home and back in the schedule. So, last night I was able to get the podcast done and stuff. But
I need to finish listening to that. I listened to a decent chunk of it, and I freaking loved it, man. Like I was laughing in the chat because we were in Edisto for the weekend, and I was laying in bed at the Airbnb, like nodding my head like I'm there, like an idiot, like getting all into it. And it was a great episode, man. Phil's awesome. I'm really glad you did that Xenogama show because that's such a cool group of lizards.
For sure. And especially just the way that he is he's
yeah.
more than happy to share, super easy to talk to, crazy knowledgeable about all his stuff. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
He was very into it. He was really excited about it.
She's like, I think, well, no, because Phil had mentioned something about a superworm colony, and she was like, went on this rant about like only you people would talk about colonies of bugs and how awesome it is to have them. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Do
Like,
y'all ever listen to yourselves talk? And it's just so funny because it's like this is totally normal in your world, and yet if you were in a public place listening to this, people would be like, "What the fuck?
Yeah.
A worm colony? Like, what is going on here?"
Well, I remember I couldn't. I don't think I mentioned it on that show, but doing that reminded me of when Matt and Jamie and I drove down to South Beach at like 1 a.m. to meet this strung out lady to buy like 5,000 dubia for like $200. And so we drove down in my like Hyundai
That's a
Elantra.
deal. That's a
We
deal.
drove down
Florida story.
Yeah, Florida. We literally, Matthew was messaging her on Facebook, and he's like, "Would you take $200 for the whole colony?" And she's like, yeah, I just want to get rid of them." She's
I
like,
just
"All
want
right, we're going."
cash. I
Yeah.
just need
I'm getting
cash.
itchy.
I just need the cash, man. And we drove down. I think it was my
Peanut
Hyundai
butter and
Elantra,
crack sandwich.
and it was like a 50-gallon tote with all like the Vaseline on it and everything, right? And no shit,
Even from crawling out.
There was like
Phil has the best stories.
we drove down to South Beach and like maneuvered our way through like the obstacles of that which is the trendy area to get to this like shanty of a townhouse. And this woman just comes out all strung out and she's like, "Here's your roaches." And Matthew's like, "Here's $200. Have a good night."
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. People think you're like buying meth or something, and you're like, "No, I swear it's just roaches."
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see what Bill ends up doing with his and getting him set up and stuff. I know you had talked about putting some bulkheads or something in those, or was that something you were planning to do with future acquisitions?
Say it again. You sounded like a robot. I can hear Phil, but you're super.
I said when you get yours set up, send pictures so I can post them, and I'm curious to see what you do with them, because you had talked about adding bulkhead to some of them.
So this set of 4, I am going to do an Australian quad. So that's going to be all zoopoxy, either cliff face or boulder stuff, depending on what I'm doing, and a couple of fake trees. And then I had talked to the folks at BlackBox when we were at the show. The next set that I get, they had talked about trying to figure out bulkheads and things like that. And I think maybe my next set will be that way. And I'm trying to figure out, I really like the 3x3x18 size that I have. Because I think I can do a lot of different species. And I have, my son and I have, yeah, right? The Dollar General rat exchange for sure. My son and I have a ton of turtles, and I would love to be able to build bigger setups where I could have the water feature and the turtles be a part of that. But to save on size, what I think I'm going to do is, or what I would like to do is, we talked to BlackBox about doing the bulkhead. I would like to do the 3x3x18 on top. I'm going to build the base. Inside of that base will be the shorter troughs that I use for turtles. And then I would like to have it where it missed the top Indo species. Originally, I was thinking about my mangrove just off the top of my head. And I have a pink belly side neck or something like that where I could do an Indo turtle on the bottom. And then the drainage for the 3x3x18 on top would go into the water drip wall for the turtle. And I'm trying to figure out how I would plumb that.
That would be cool.
Do you have a picture?
I have the basic idea hammered out. I just need to see what the flow rate for the drip wall would be, and
Mm-hmm.
they're obviously going to have to be separate because the drainage for the plant layer and stuff in the top would not be sufficient to continue the drip wall cycle, but it could be supplemental or something of that nature. And so I'm trying to figure out how to combine those things. Like my son also has a Creft side neck, which is an Australian species. And so I thought to kind of keep that trend. I have a lot of small and mid-sized turtles that could be in single species exhibits below snake or lizard or what have you from that part of the world. So I'm drawing some of that up right now.
Do you have a picture of your mangrove? Because that sounds really cool.
I know you said something and it ended with cool, but that's all I got.
The mangrove is a mangrove monitor.
Do you have a picture of your mangrove?
Ooh,
Phil's got a mangrove.
There you go. Beautiful. I
It's the same size it was last week.
That sounds so neat. So are you using BlackBox cages to make that?
Yeah, I mean, part of it at least.
That is really cool.
I think there's a delay again.
I think.
Yeah, there's a delay. You sound good on my end.
Why can I can hear Phil incredibly well.
It's you, Justin.
It's probably me. I don't know.
My internet's terrible. I have no idea.
Regardless, when you get them set up, make sure to see them. So check out blackboxcages.com. Find them on Instagram and Facebook. And then we can't forget about Puget Sound Pythons. Jeff and Kendra, awesome people. Give them a follow as well. I think they might be in the chat. I thought I saw them pop up earlier.
Yeah, I think they were in a little while ago.
But this is my wife that you can hear and not see. She exists. It's like
Gendra was in the chat making fun of me, saying that Phil had lost his hair. Thanks,
nice.
Gendra.
There we go. They're there. They're there. Yeah. What's new for the week there, Philip?
Not too much. It was Anna Marie and I's anniversary yesterday. So
saw that.
We had a lovely day. Thank you.
Is that one whole year?
That's one whole year.
Oh, Phil.
Yep, she stuck around for a whole year.
Good for you.
Yep, and we had a lovely day. We did a lot of nothing, and then we went out to the glades and caught a sunset. And,
you had to redo that first date.
Had to do the chop down a tree.
Yeah,
I'm assuming she left her pepper spray behind this time.
She did leave her pepper spray behind this time, so that's good. And no, it was fun. We caught the sunset, and dude, it was crazy. It was like 78 degrees when we got out there, and then the minute the ball of the sun went below the horizon line, it crashed and went to 64. And then when we were actually like leaving the area, it was like 62.
What day was that?
Yesterday. And
Monday. Yeah.
And it was very, very weird because normally, like, myself and Dr. Loafman have talked about this plenty of times. Like in the Southeast, 70 degrees is like the magic number. Like you really don't find many snakes after 70 degrees unless you're really digging for them.
Yeah.
But it was 64 degrees Fahrenheit and there was Neurodia everywhere.
Justy.
So we caught some crazy red flame bandits and some really nice looking Floridas. Moved a bunch of them off the road because there were some people out there driving around fishing and stuff. So it was a good time, man. It was a good time.
I caught a lure with my toes.
Casey, we're gonna do what was that show?
Oh, tuataras and tampons.
I keep wanting to call it Temecula's and tampons because I like Temecula's, but
nice.
I don't want to move me to the bottom because then Bill's gonna get.
It's fine. I won't stay long.
There we go.
Oh,
that's
there
super
we go.
exciting.
Yeah, there we go. You can see everybody.
Andy got a sampler in today, so there is a Snakes and Stogies sampler for the month of April.
Excellent.
Hit me up as long as you're 21 or older, and get you one. I sent out the first round of them Saturday, one of those days. It had to be Friday because that's when we left. But yeah, so Nice little eclectic mix. I'm actually smoking the Intemperance Connecticut box press from Romacraft. You can't see it from here, but yes, the age is 21 now for tobacco, in case you didn't know. So, this is a great little Connecticut. This sampler in particular for this month is kind of a little mix of some lighter and then some stronger stuff. So all good. $60 shipped. It's pretty much free shipping, if we're being honest. But if you need some cigars, it's a little different from what you're normally grabbing from your local liquor store or whatever. I'm the man to hit up.
He is the man.
So,
he got the access.
Got the hookup.
that's right.
Got that good sweet shit.
He won't come out of a meth house with a pack of cigars.
But he will come out of a crack den with a bucket full of roaches. Cockroaches.
We were driving by a gas station. We went to Edisto for the weekend. We were driving by a gas station on our way there, and it's in the middle of nowhere in Jacksonboro, South Carolina. And I was like, "Oh, that's where I bought my first blood python."
He did. He said,
This BP out in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, "Yeah, I got my first blood python at that gas station."
We went to Walterboro first, and Walterboro is it's kind of like one of those dying towns.
I don't know that it was ever like really living.
I think it used to be pretty hopping.
It's got a lot of empty spaces, be it whole buildings or like units and stuff. Just Mike said Jake looks good tonight.
Hey, I'm just as washed out as Jake is normally.
Jake's paler.
Translucent,
But
like
yeah,
hemidactylus.
we went to this pizza place. It was the funniest thing. It was like a cave.
Yeah, it was like a dungeon.
But the pizza was really, really good. It was like one of those like shady kind of places that has amazing food. And the waiter guy was
he was awesome.
He was like the
He was
happiest
great.
guy.
He was like super happy to be there.
Yeah, he was excited to be making pizzas.
Super friendly.
Yeah,
Stromboli was on point.
The weirdest place is it was just weird. The whole thing was just weird, and I was like, "Can we go now? Let's go."
But we went to what's it called? Botany Bay, which is a WMA out in that area, which was really cool. Tons of history there. Used to be old a couple of plantations, so there's a bunch of like old ruins, I guess, of like big plantation houses and stuff like that, and some like
Thank you, Billy.
It was like the ice house that was built in what was it like way early, like 1800s, right?
Well, the whole plantation had started in the 1700s.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, the whole place was super neat. Just because of the way like DNR had taken over and made the entire thing just like they were planting crops that were reinforcing wildlife, and like the whole thing was just like leave only your footprints, and it was just really, really nice to see because around here it's such a touristy place. People want to take stuff. Justin Smith.
No corns. I was looking for corns though.
We didn't see a
Hardcore.
single
There wasn't.
snake
I didn't see. Yeah, we didn't even. There was like supposed to be fox squirrels and stuff around there too. Didn't see a single one. So
not a single one.
It was a bummer. We did a good bit of walking, and then on our way back from Edisto today, it was I guess late morning. We stopped at Edisto Nature Trail, which I took some videos of and posted on Instagram. That place was really cool. That was like just prime Diamondback real estate, like those low-lying palms, just.
He was
acres.
so excited. He's like, surely I'll
also
find one. He didn't
see anything. So
rattlesnake condos.
Yeah, so me and Jake are at some point we're gonna go back there and dig around.
Well, it's still early in the season.
Yeah, but it's freaking gorgeous out there. Like it's a surprisingly long sort of trail that goes through it, but it's like swamp, lowland, just
miles.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Did see some really cool birds. If you're into birds,
nice.
I'm super into birds.
But it was one of those places that we've always driven by it, even when I was younger, and we never stopped at it. So you see the parking lot with the sign that says Ace Basin Edisto Nature Trail, and I was like, oh, that's cool. We should stop and check that out sometime. And never did until today, and it was worth it. It's like probably one of the coolest places I've ever been in the state. So hands down.
Nice.
So
That's
definitely
awesome.
gonna have to get Jake out there. Maybe go out there later in the evening and see if we can find something around
If
sundown.
Phil ever comes to visit us,
That too.
we can take him there. Make sure you bring plenty of Fiji water bottles.
Oh yeah. If it's under 12 inches, we're snagging it.
We're snagging it. It's happening.
Yep. Bill, what about you, bud?
I just like living far enough away that people don't give me a hard time for not visiting. So I'm good.
Is it still too cold to do some herping?
Oh yeah, for sure. Up here is crazy. I was just in Jersey for 2 weeks, and actually, I was on the coast. It was pretty windy, and it didn't get all that warm. But when it was sunny out, you can hear tons and tons of frogs, which was really cool. And it was the place I was at was by some golf courses, so I just did some walking, mostly looking for turtles and stuff to see what I could see. Who was basking, and it was pretty much all amphibians. But it was nice to. It's way better than here. I mean, there's absolutely nothing here. It's still too cold. So,
Well, at least you got to add a little bit, you know?
Yeah, that's cool.
That's why I was sure today would be a good day for it, because we had a high of like 80.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was cool in the shady areas, but it was warm enough to where I would figure stuff would be out sunning, and came up empty-handed. So it's just an excuse to go back. For us, it's like maybe an hour drive from the house to get out there. So it's actually not that far from Jake, from where Jake lives. He's close. He's way closer to it than I am, but be
I
awesome.
feel like you could actually go in the lot next door to our house and find stuff.
Maybe.
I
I don't
mean,
know.
we saw copperheads over there. And
Yeah, I've
some
seen a lot
hognoses
of species in our little
coming out.
lot next to the house.
Bagels.
Bagels. Archie came out of the woods with the sleeve of bagels that somehow ended up in the woods. We don't know where they came from.
Came trotting up.
Were they fresh?
Yes. They
Really?
did not have any mold on them whatsoever, and they were soft.
Wow.
I was alarmed.
Someone's just casing our house and eating bagels as they stake it out.
It was probably somebody fell out of their grocery bag when they were walking home, and yeah.
That dreaded South Carolina bagel man hiding in the woods, you know? That cryptozoological marvel.
Bagel man.
Bagel man.
Started snowing while you were herping. That doesn't sound fun at all. How do you... Is stuff even out? when it's that cold?
You'd be surprised. I mean, they're out in the Pacific Northwest, so they do see like garters and some other stuff, salamanders and whatnot. But that's stuff that's much more attuned to being out and about in cooler weather, colder weather than what we get here. So
you got to chance it so you can get that iconic rubber boa on snow picture,
which would still be freaking cool.
That would be like epic. That's like the
Do
picture
it for the gram.
But yes, it's not always about finding the stuff as much as enjoying the scenery, which once again, if you don't find something, it's just an excuse to go back.
Yeah, like we were just in awe.
Yeah.
So the place that we walked through was like, it had been phosphate mining at one point and was just swamp anyway, which you find a lot of here. Absolutely. So there was just water everywhere and these humongous cypress trees.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was just gorgeous. Like it was a morning well spent just walking through.
Yeah, I always say I'm either a really, really bad hunter or I just enjoy armed nature walks.
I was packing.
He was packing. Well, it's kind of sketchy. It's like right on the side of the highway, and you just pull off, and anybody.
No one would hear you
hanging
scream.
Anybody? Yeah, exactly. No one would hear you scream. So it's smart to be armed. I'm sure that's how it is in the Everglades.
Stay
right?
strapped.
Yes, it is. Most
Lots of
definitely.
weird stuff happening in there.
In other news, hopefully eggs are going to be coming soon. I have a couple females that look like they're going into shed, so I'm hoping that's a prelay. That female blood red is looking like she might be gravid, so we'll see. I know the male, he was trying his damnedest to make it happen. I don't know if she ever let him, but hopefully she did. So I put egg boxes in the incubator to get them ready and prepped today as well. So hopefully eggs are happening. And I have a care package coming from Mr. Chris Painchab Wednesday.
Oh yeah, what's in that?
Oh,
He pretty much forced me to take these corns.
Oh, I'm sure that was a real fight.
Oh
from
yeah.
you.
Oh
He's
yeah.
like, I'm sending them to you. I was
Literally
like,
twisted your arm.
okay.
No, please don't.
I was like, dude, I have nowhere. The Jansenite eggs. Oh, okay, yeah. So that's actually a good, nice segue away from this. Jansenite eggs I threw out. They did not make it, so kind of not all that surprised by it. But
Even that one?
even that one, there was one good one out of one decent looking one out of the three, but they all just they started to mold over really bad and it started to smell, so they were done. So I tossed them, but it's a bummer, but it's not that big of a bummer because if they're giving me eggs now, that means I'm going to get more eggs later. So now we just wait until some really healthy ones show up and I start checking the egg box more regularly instead of being an idiot. And
When do you think she'll lay again?
I don't know. I mean, she may not lay another clutch for a while. They're not. So there's the Jansenite and the Oxycephalum. Oxycephalum, they'll lay multiple clutches in a year, but the Jansenite, it sounds like from what I've read, they are not a multi-clutch layer. So we'll see.
It's time for me to
that's
jump
weird that there'd be that difference like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Whew. Katie's out of here. Where does Phil go?
That's a good question.
Yeah, so the packages that are coming tomorrow, know what she's calling.
Yeah, good save, Miguel. Changing subjects now. Let's get back to what we were really talking about.
Yeah, so Chris has some extra males that he's sending, and then he has a female that is a male mask, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm supposed to be getting a male buff from Ryan Cox. He had one that he got from Phelan that he wanted to stay like in the family, quote unquote. So I'm gonna get that from him probably later this month, and then Chris wants me to pair up that buff male to that male mask down the road. So yeah, no more new snakes that no one ever. So there's all kinds of, and then Mike had some stuff that he was parting with, so I'm like really tempted by that. It's just I have this old rack that I got rid of in lieu of the XR20 that I got from BlackBox that I may end up having to pull back into the room and find space for with all the stuff happening. So this whole problem could be solved if I just had a bigger room.
Yeah, and Mike in the chat as well. He shared some really awesome stuff that some Texas rat stuff. It was beautiful.
Yep. There's one particular male motley he has that I am very much interested in. I need to talk to him about it. Mike, message me. Convert the garage, I wish. Given my I don't know that there's a door sweep big enough for the garage door. And I don't know. I actually thought about it. I've been playing with the idea of maybe figuring out a way to like get a heater and an AC or something in here to regulate certain times of the year, because that would make life easier. Phil, will you just buy me a bigger house?
Sure, no problem.
See, what you need is your separate facility.
And see, I'll argue that because I absolutely despise having a separate facility.
I'm with Phil on that one. Like having to go somewhere. I mean, first of all, I worry the fact that I don't have access to my stuff right there.
Yeah.
Like like if a fire happens here at the house, I'm gonna know about it because we have the fire alarms, we have the alarm system, all that good stuff. Fire happens somewhere else, if I don't have any sort of alarm system or something over there, I could lose everything and not know it until it's already said and done. So
yeah,
I'm right there with Phil because Jake has talked about it, like us splitting a spot or something like that, and I'm like, I don't like having, especially if we did it like between where he and I are, because he's across the county from me, so we'd be talking like a 30-minute drive, and I'm like, I don't want to have to drive a half an hour to go and take care of my stuff on a regular basis. Like,
yeah, 100%.
If it were in my backyard, that'd be one thing.
And even in the backyard, like Nipper has his snake building out back, and kudos to him for having a legitimate snake building, but it's bad enough for me to have to walk upstairs. And I mean, I know it sounds lazy, and I know it sounds asinine.
I don't even care about that.
But it's one of those things where, like, you get home, you're exhausted from the day, and yeah, you enjoy your stuff, and yeah, you know you have an obligation to take care of things, but there's sometimes I'm just like, you know what, I'll just do it in the morning. It's no big deal, right? Well, if it's outside, it's even worse. And if it's farther away, it's even worse. And again, I know it sounds lazy and it sounds like, you know, like I don't care, but I've had stuff at multiple facilities, not just one, and having to remember, oh crap, I got to go to this one today and not that one. And you know, you get home and you're like, oh crap, I forgot I was supposed to go do X, Y, and Z, and you got to go back out and do it. Yeah. So
I thought about possibly talking to my dad about paying him like monthly to keep stuff in one of the rooms upstairs at their house. Like, that's not a far drive, like it's not ideal, but it might be the least headache inducing option. But I mean, Billy and Dragon Lair there bring up a good point. Out of sight, out of mind. You know, I'm kind of bad about that because even for me, like stuff that's at the top of a rack and stuff that's at the bottom of a rack is usually the stuff that I end up doing last or sort of not paying as much attention to, if we're being honest. So,
or honestly, I mean, if your quarantine rack or your quarantine area is thin because you haven't got anything new in a long time, it's almost like, I don't want to say you forget about them, but you do. You know what I mean? And not in a neglectful way, but it's like, wait a minute, I haven't given them water in a few days. I got to give them water. And I mean, obviously I keep arid species, so it's not that big a deal for me, but it is that out of sight, out of mind thing. And it's sad to say it, but it's a truth, you know?
Yeah. I don't know.
No, I get it. It makes it does make it more like work and less hobby fun.
Right.
But to my end, I would say, like, it just becomes what's normal. Like for me, it's very close. It's only like 2 blocks, so it's not far away. But that's just what we do. Like when Teresa takes the kids to school, they go check lights, and some things aren't automated. They turn things on or what have you, and then I get home and I check stuff, turn off whatever is not on a timer or something like that. Like it just becomes kind of part of your routine eventually.
Sure.
But it is way more job than hobby.
Right.
Or it starts to feel like it, I guess, because, you know, just silly things like we went and got paper towels for our house. And then I was like, oh, I need a thing of paper towels for the shop. Like it's its own thing. You have to treat it that way. And so it does get a little more job than fun. But for me, I mean, it's part of a business. So it kind of
sure.
It doesn't negatively affect me that it feels like work because it's also earning me money. So,
yeah. And I mean, I definitely wouldn't want to like load up at my parents' place and have a bunch of stuff over there. Like I'd keep it fairly light, like maybe a rack or two and then some hatchling stuff or whatever hatches out this year. But it wouldn't be like an entire separate like other room of stuff because that's overkill.
Yeah, I feel like if it merits it, then go for it. Of course, you know what I mean. If you live in an apartment and if you live in a 1-bedroom apartment and you'd like to have a collection, well, then obviously you don't have to. You could have a bedroom full of critters, you know, but it would make more sense to have an offsite facility. But at the same time, that's almost a necessity. Well, as if you have a house with multiple rooms, or you have a townhouse, or even a large apartment with multiple rooms, it is way easier, both mentally and physically, to maintain a collection when it's at home.
Yeah,
in my personal opinion, you know?
Absolutely.
So,
as a person who doesn't have a collection at home, 100%.
Yeah. And I'm envious. You have a basement too, right?
At the facility, yeah. Well, at my house,
Yeah.
but there's nothing in it. There's a rat rack in the house basement.
Okay, because like I would kill to have a basement. I think a basement would be awesome. You know what I mean? Because then you could cool stuff, you can heat stuff. You have a copious amounts of space, because most basements are at least 2/3 of the floor space of the building.
Yes.
So I mean, I'm very, very envious of the basement concept, and I feel like I might have a quarantine rack or a quarantine area in a room, and then just dedicate a basement to the collection, which would be fantastic. But even there, it's no different than having the building out back. You have to remember, and I know it sounds so horrible. I hate saying it. Like I cringe myself saying it, but it's a fact to me that you have to remember to do those things and not neglect them.
I don't know. If I did it and kept some stuff at my parents' house, it would be indefinite, because I have gotten the okay for like a separate shed out back, but until we sort of figure out the logistics of that and the size and how we would actually get it back there and stuff like that, which we're a long ways from that happening. So,
well, weren't you going to convert the garage?
We had talked about that too, but I feel like it's like wartime in the Middle East. Like there's constant negotiations going on.
I don't know. In my personal opinion, having seen your garage and the layout of your house, I feel like if you guys aren't using the garage for a vehicle and it's simply reptiles and storage and podcasting,
it's all kinds of crap.
I was gonna say, it's
like a Goodwill in here.
You could close the garage door, put up a single wall of drywall. You know what I mean? Even put a friggin' door in it if you wanted to, and you could have all the Salvation Army crap in there, and the animals, and the podcast studio, and then allocate that extra bedroom for whatever.
Certain blonde members of the household do not like the appearance of converted garages on houses.
Yeah, but no one's going to see it from the outside.
Yeah, if you just convert the interior, the exterior should be normal.
Yeah,
you would think so.
Fair enough.
Believe me,
I
have fought for that hardcore. Constant negotiations. Because then, I mean, my thing was like the price of a shed and getting one sealed and insulated and electricity and all that stuff run to it versus the cost of just converting a garage. To me, they seem to make more sense. But I've played every card I could, man. They all got shuffled right back in the deck.
Well, I know when Nipper talks about it, though, that's a policy-driven thing, right? Like he has to do that.
Yeah. Well, it's for two reasons. Yes and no. So he has a very diverse collection, right? Whether it be venomous stuff, constrictors, geckos, lizards, and some of the stuff's even outdoors and outdoor enclosures. But his wife is very much, we have whatever you want, just not in the house. So, So that's the first concept. And to him, it was like, well, if I'm doing its own building, I'm going to do my own building.
Yeah.
Right. And therefore, he has all the DWA licenses to have basically whatever he wants in terms of danger factor and whatnot. And it's more beneficial to his peace of mind because he knows that there is the airlock door and it's escape-proof building, and it has all the heating elements and the electricity and all that stuff. So it's almost a blessing in disguise for him.
Well, that's something I've been pushing too, is like I want something that's going to be bigger by a certain percentage than what I really need, because you think by the time you add drywall and insulation and stuff, you're taking significant, like you're shrinking down your usable space, and I don't want to end up putting all this money into something and then having pretty much the same issue I have now, which is like I'm right where I'm left out, where I am currently, just outside. Like I want it to be a little bigger so that I have room for more stuff. And I mean, I don't want like a friggin' warehouse size building, but I don't want a little tiny shack either.
Yeah, you don't want a hangar in the backyard, but I
want to be able to move around.
Right. If you think you need a 10 by 10, you may want to make it 15 by 10 or 20 by 10.
Yeah.
Or bigger.
Because even those, though, you think about when you have racks along the walls, that's another, 22 inches off the wall.
Right.
If I have a table in there, that cuts it down even more. Like, I don't want it to be to where I can't move around and work things comfortably.
Right.
And do, it's
and you're not a small fella.
I'm not. Damn it.
And I also think, and it's nothing against the wives or the significant others, but I think in their mind, because they don't necessarily think the way we do in this regard, in their mind, it's going to be like a prefab, pool shed from Home Depot. That's like, 8 by 6, and you keep your pool skimmer and your chemicals and crap in there, and maybe an old bandsaw from your dad. But no, we need basically a makeshift lab with enclosures. And I think that there's that one person has something in their mind, another person has something in their mind. It's definitely not jiving. Yeah.
I thought you kept stuff at home though, Bill. I didn't know it was all.
My son has some turtles, and we have one juvenile red tegu in the room here, and that's it as far as reptiles go.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I thought your whole house was the menagerie.
No, it was, and then we actually got lucky. Our living room is humongous. We live in a really old house, and we had it set up, all along the walls, and it was actually like nicely furniture style done. And as we started to expand doing the shows, I needed a handful of bigger species and accommodate it. Like I have a 50-inch Argus monitor. Like he can't live here. If he could in my basement, it would be feasible. But as far as the layout of our house, like I cannot house him in my home. He's too big. And so we, especially working with the rescue, we had the giant sulcata and things like that. And so just to be able to, what I thought was care for them, what I want is the right way. I just needed more space than was feasible here. But yeah, I mean, like all of our colubrids, gecko, all that kind of stuff, that's super easy to fit in our house. It was just that once we had a facility for the larger things, I was like, nah, man, let's just put everything there, timers, set it all up. It just conglomerate it all. And then Teresa's a tegu nerd, so whenever she has a birthday or anniversary and I get her a random lizard, she babies it in the room for a little while.
That's cool. You get it established and have a little fun with it, and when the time comes, you ship them out. So that's cool. So, Justin, is this your segue into our primary topic tonight?
It is. I know we're like 45 minutes in, but
it's good. It's what we do, man. This is the THN.
We have no agenda. We fly by the seat. We fly by the seat of our pants around here.
Well, what's funny is I have a new side hobby that is I basically got into numismatics. So anybody who doesn't know what that is, go Google it. And I started listening to this one podcast, and they try to keep it around an hour, but you can totally tell that the interviews they have like their opening stuff, or like they talk about current events, and they have their closing stuff, but the interview in the middle with their guests, you can tell was probably 2 or 3 hours, if not longer. And they cut it up and edited it to be like exactly 36 minutes to fit in that hour block. And all I could think of was, man, this is a great show with great guests and great hosts and good conversation and good topic. And yes, numismatics is super boring to most people, but it sucks they cut it up, man. Like, it's not like you're paying for airtime. It's a podcast,
Right.
So I love the way we do things, man. Maybe I'm biased.
Yeah. Well, we were wanting to talk about.
At least Justin does like prompts and stuff. Like I've heard guests reference that of like he lets folks know, like, here's some of the ideas I thought about talking or what have you. Like, dude, I don't even do that. Like I'm texting with people or messaging and I'm like, yo, Xenogama are awesome. Come tell me about them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just let Philip talk. Like if you heard the episode that I just did with Philip, like I actually said 10 seconds before I hit record, we actually were already doing the episode because he just got on and was like, and it started going. I was like, yo,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to be a jerk, but like, shut up for 5 seconds. I'm going to hit go live and then just keep saying what you were saying.
Yeah.
Just go.
Yeah. I mean, like the outlines and stuff, at least when we do THPs, that's when I do them the most. Like with this, we really don't usually have one. We just have like a topic in mind and we kind of just slowly make our way to it. But the outlines and stuff for THP are for us to be able to keep things like they're short outlines. They're not super long, super in depth where it's like, okay, at this point we're going to transfer to this. It's like, here's a list of stuff we want to cover. A lot of it's so I don't forget these questions because I know I will. But you leave enough wiggle room for tangents and follow-up questions. And like the way we've got it figured out now, I think we have a pretty good system in place for that kind of stuff to where we get like by the end of the episode, we're right at like an hour and a half, 2 hours. We feel like we've covered everything we wanted to cover. And it works out. Like we've got it, the tempo right to where we've got it all sort of.
Yeah. And I think that the three of us do a great job of, despite our intense departures, I think the three of us do a great job of keeping on that list, even if it's not in order.
Right.
But keeping the pace and keeping everything else. So, and yes, Billy Jenkins, numismatics.
I thought it was like Connects or something.
Yeah, I have a new Erector set with Lincoln logs attached to them. So, enlighten us, Smitty, as to your thoughts on this topic.
So this is actually something that me and Jake had talked about a couple weeks ago because he was like, he had talked about. He's talked about how he always wanted to open like a serpentarium of sorts,
right.
a public sort of place where people can come through, check out a bunch of cool stuff, like
every herper's dream,
pretty much. And so I think at one point we had talked about this being a THP episode, but I was like, you know what, this would be a good Snakes and Stogies one. And Bill being a guy who has a public facility and does talks and stuff like that, I wanted to get into sort of the nitty gritty of how you go about actually doing that, because me and Jake talked about it in depth one day, just when we were cleaning mice or something. And I'm like, man, it'd be awesome to do, but I feel like there's a lot of hurdles you got to jump over, not only, with your county or your city, like insurance, finding a space that's suitable, like location, marketing stuff, which that isn't as much of the problem as the physical stuff is. But when did you guys decide to make like a public facility?
Ooh, I have had my zoo plan drawn out since I was in undergrad. That's I actually did I planned out a zoo as part of an undergrad project at one point, and my roommate in college, we worked the whole thing out. But anyway, so I've always wanted to do it. Even when I was studying this stuff in school, educating other people was like the goal. I like studying them. I like field herping and doing field work, but I got, I don't know, just as much enjoyment as when I brought those pictures back and told students about the trip that we did or whatever. And so I figured out that I liked both. And then that went into the zoological field and things like that. And zookeepers don't make any money. So I went a different career path and then started doing the shows as a side hobby. And we started that in 2012, I think, as like an official business with Teresa and myself. I've been doing it since I was in high school, either helping people and then in college doing it on my own. And dude, once we started doing stuff on Facebook and social media, it exploded. And I didn't realize the demand was what it is. We're kind of close to Chicago, and Tinley's a big deal. So I probably should have expected it, but I didn't. And that the demand for the shows that we were doing necessitated us getting a bigger collection. We needed, like, we ended up doing things for like the Museum of Science and Industry. That's not like take a selfie with a boa. That is real science, real collections, having actual specimens and licenses and all sorts of things. And when it went that direction, we needed it to house the specimens that we wanted to be able to present. And then when I was talking to Teresa about it, I was like, I don't just want to get a pole building and house them. It just seemed wasteful. Like if I was going to have a facility to house specimens like this, why would I not have it be dual purpose in that people could come to it?
What's the point in having something?
Things, right? Like you either go all the way or you don't. Like there is no in between. Did he freeze? No, he's still moving.
No, he's frozen.
I'm here.
Oh, he blinked. He blinked.
I heard no in between. That's all I got.
Yeah, I said it's one of those things where you either have to go all the way or you kind of don't do it at all. Like at least for it to be something that becomes an attraction, like a reason for people to come to an area. Like you want it to be you want the show, you want the whole thing.
Yeah, and it was also like at the time we were really heavily involved with the rescue, and a big part of what we did for the rescue and for most of the outlets in that type of realm, I guess, in the Midwest, where we were the people that dealt with the giant stuff. And so it became very obvious very fast that there aren't a lot of people who actually are equipped to do that. And a lot of times even the people that are skilled at that don't necessarily have the space to help when it comes to like a Department of Natural Resources or, confiscation or things. Like they would call us and be like, hey, if this conservation cops goes and takes this alligator, it's going to go in his basement at home until he can bring it to the courthouse or whatever. Like, they're not set up to do that. Like, oh, so you're going to take a gator to a courthouse for a trial? Like, what are you talking about? That's like, they just didn't have the resources to do some of those things. And so it really pushed us to like, look, we need a facility for what we want to do. The things that we're getting involved with and getting more involved with as we get licenses and you kind of get your bona fides, right? Like IDNR came inspected us and they were like, oh, like you went to school for this and know what you're talking about. You're not just an idiot with a retic. Like, okay. Like we'll bring more things to you. We can be more involved. We did a lot of work with some smaller zoological facilities in Illinois, and that afforded us access to some species that other people probably don't get access to. I was at a dinner, and Teresa shut it down really quick, but I was at a dinner for a charity thing for a zoo, and a curator of a zoo was like, yo, do you still have your giant van? And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, we do all the family stuff plus the reptiles. And he was like, in the basement of this banquet thing is a 12-foot Orinoco crocodile. Do you think we could build a crate and fit it in your van? And I didn't know, but his wife and Teresa were hanging out like at the other end of the table. And she just leaned out and was like, no.
Man, why not?
So at the time, she is way better now, but she was not a reptile person. She was a teacher, and she enjoys teaching and she enjoys working with children and doing that kind of thing. And she came to be a reptile person, like secondary to that. She fell in love with our giant retic. She really likes tegus. She is, my son is big into turtles, so she loves helping him. Like, she has very specific interests in the reptile hobby, but it started with her teaching kids about the stuff that I was keeping and doing lessons. And so she was like, no, that you can't just get a crocodile. Like, that's not a thing. And I was like,
oh,
yeah,
but you can.
Well, but people don't think about that. Like, you're right. You can't just get a crocodile. However, if you have an insured inspected facility that is permitted, yes, you can. Now there's money and, there's more to it than that.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as like the actual legal ability to possess that thing in our state, yeah, you absolutely can, because we did what we were supposed to do and followed the rules and, so on and so forth. And it was coming from an accredited institution. And
yeah, but now he just wanted you to transport, right? He wasn't donating it, right?
No, he was talking about us taking possession of it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Even better.
Yeah, like craziness. Which is funny because at the time, Teresa was like, no, I don't want to do crocodilians. There was a semi-famous person in Illinois that did a lot of shows with alligators, and there is still a semi-famous person in Illinois, a separate person, that does displays with crocodilians. And it's a situation where she got to see behind the curtain, and it was not what you would hope it would be.
Yeah.
And so that really turned her off to that. And she was very against it once she saw the negatives from those particular folks. And it took a really long time for her to, like, we have crocodilians now. But that was honestly driven by when the Department of Natural Resources came to inspect us. He's over the moon, and it's all in Teresa's name. The permits are hers. That this is her business. I help run it, but it's her business. And he was like, "No, you're really good. You can do this." And I think it was different that it wasn't me saying it, I guess. And he, this is his profession. It's his job to say whether or not you're okay at this. And,
right.
And when he came, because at the time we have like an endangered species permit for some turtles and stuff. Like, people hear endangered species, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's crazy. It can just, like, in our state,
assume it's Bengal tiger when it's not. It's a wood turtle.
Dude, in Illinois, it's a western hognose. Like, it can be simple things. And but it's, you still have to be inspected and that kind of thing. And so he inspected us for some benign things, and saw the rear fangs set up, and oh man, did you guys ever think about, because in Illinois you can't have exotic venomous, it has to be North American native. And he was like, well, you can't have a cobra and you can't have these things, but you could explain hooding and stuff. Maybe if you had a false water cobra, or you could, like, he was giving us ideas for how to teach these things, but not have an AZA venom facility,
Right.
And so I think that kind of, like, she heard that and was like, oh, well, this dude thinks that we could be the people with the crocodile, like, and it really helped to push that on. 'Cause, especially for her, she is a mom. So, like, she carries tegus in a hoodie. Like, that's how she gets big lizards to not be obnoxious. She just treats them like dogs and toddlers until they stop. And, like, that's what she did with a gator. She's like, nah, we're just going to hold it. I'll tape its face shut and it'll get, like, she just.
Yeah, you're breaking it like a horse.
We'll make it last.
And
breaking it like a horse.
Yeah. But it's also the reason, her experiences or lack thereof are also why we don't have North American venomous. We do have the boiga, and we use that to explain to schools the venomous rules for Illinois and how they're kept and things like that, because they're treated the same way. But we don't have any North American venomous, because for the same reason, she is the person that catches the bull snake when it comes shooting out of the tub.
Mm-hmm.
And she she is worried that she wouldn't be able to break the habit. And so we kind of have to, like, I can do it, I'm good, but she can't, and she's my partner. And so we built the facility to accommodate both.
Sure.
What was the biggest hurdle with the entire thing? Was it like insurance and getting permitted, and like that to me seems like it would be the biggest.
So
biggest
insurance is weird. Having a facility makes your insurance better. I am charged. So my insurance premium for the month changes every year, and it is assessed based on how much exposure I have to the public, and they do that by number of events. Any event outside of my facility is a higher risk.
Right.
And so it's to my benefit to have everybody come to me. And price-wise, it actually is for me as well. Like I charge the same amount of money for someone to come to my facility if they want to have an event, and they get double the time because it's 2 blocks from my house. So if you want to come hang out for 2 hours, instead of me driving to your house for an hour for your birthday party, I'll drop the mileage because I'm not driving, and it's the same amount of money because it's my place.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the insurance side, it's to my benefit. At the end of the year, if I can show that I did more on-site presentations and exposure to the public, my insurance rate will go down.
And do they have a certain insurance for that kind of business, or is it something they would have?
It's just treated like a petting zoo. Okay. So it was really hard to find insurance that kind of understood what I was talking about. So Jason Hood, he lives in Florida now, but he was the president of the Chicago Herpetological Society, and they do some public outreach stuff and things like that. And so I went through them to help find an insurance broker in the Midwest that would kind of understand what I was saying when I explained this business. And my lady's cool. Like, she follows me on Facebook. She's super cool. But the way she wrote everything and described it all, it's just like I could have goats and a camel, or I can have a tortoise. Like, they don't care. That's not true.
Like, they liability is like liability kind of thing.
Pretty much. Like, I gave her a species list. She, like, they know. I like talked about the rules in Illinois. Like, in Illinois, you can't touch venomous as a member of the public. Like, it doesn't matter what I have. It has to stay in the enclosure. Or if I'm out doing a demonstration, like if I wanted to show it, even the boiga, if I wanted to show it on a hook, you have to be a minimum of 10 feet away from me. Like, there are very, very specific rules to limit public exposure to anything involving venomous. And my insurance people know that. And so, like, that doesn't change my liability because there is no public exposure to that. And so the rule here that's actually a really good rule. I strongly believe in that rule, but the rules here are pretty strict when it comes to doing the shows and stuff that I do. But that helps me because insurance people know that. Like, you can't screw around. And our IDNR people watch. Like, if you go on Facebook and your address is listed in Illinois and you do something dumb, somebody's gonna knock on your door. Like, they're looking. It literally just happened. I got messaged about a caiman in a suburb around Tinley, and then the conservation police posted on their Facebook page, in a suburb around Tinley, there's a conservation cop holding a caiman like this. And I was like, I don't know if it's the same people, but it's definitely the same town, and that looks a lot like the picture you sent me.
I was gonna say, what are the odds? I mean,
and I didn't call that cop, so
yeah,
like, they're looking. They are paying attention for sure.
Yeah, I think that it speaks volumes to go about it the way that you guys have, and to focus on key pieces of your business for specific reasons. You know, like you don't just have stuff to have stuff. Like there's a rhyme and a reason for it.
Well, I do.
Whether no, I mean in the business capacity and in the educational business capacity.
Yes.
So, and that doesn't mean like, oh, you have to have a retic because you have to have that one big snake. No, but I mean, you have the certain insurances. I'm sure you're bonded to a certain degree. You have the certain licenses. You know certain people. Networking and being friendly with certain individuals is all part of the, the circle of it. So I think it's fantastic the way you're doing it. I really do.
Well, and like if you look in the chat, the whole dealing with the public part. So that actually is the biggest downside to having a facility. You would think that it's like the municipal, your county or whatever, and it could be like if your town or county doesn't allow it, then you just can't do it, right? Like I like if we had to, like I would file a petition or try to change a ordinance or something, but we're pretty fortunate in that we don't have to worry about that. The part that you have to worry about is like a little bit public perception and a little bit like somebody just said something about stress on the animals with the public poking at the cages and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's for real. Like we don't have chameleons. We don't have, I have one planted tank that was dart frog style, but like I have mourning geckos in my really big planted tank. We don't have, we don't have delicate things,
right?
Some of our aquatic stuff maybe, but that's actually in the basement. And then, like we have a sign, you don't go in the basement without an adult, so on and so forth. But like the main floor out in the open, we have like pews set up for kids to sit on for walking field trips and stuff. Dude, that's like a green iguana, a rhinoceros iguana, a water monitor, a big old berm, a redfoot, stuff that just does not care that there are people around. Like they don't care about the monkeys that are walking around. There's some leopard geckos and stuff. Like all of my Amazon tree boas and we just moved the younger caiman, but when we had a younger caiman, they were in the bathroom. Like if you use the bathroom in my facility and you're sitting down, you're looking at a planted tank with a caiman in it, and next to the sink is some Amazon tree boas. Because it was dark, nobody was really in there. It was intermittently used, and they don't really like people. The younger one was kind of figuring it out, and Amazon tree boas just don't want weird monkeys by them, and so they did their own thing. Our smaller lizards and any of the smaller snakes are in 2 separate rooms. All of our hatchling stuff, at one time we were doing boas a little bit separate so they could kind of get over it because a few of those are rescues and they're a little high strung. Closed off separate rooms, and the boas were actually in a storage room. People did not go in there if you weren't related to me. And our office was the same way where the hatchlings were. I'm literally pointing at Teresa like people on the podcast can see that, but she's waving, which you also can't see. But the the hatchlings
counts
for sure. The hatchlings were the same way. Like the office is closed, no admittance, so on and so forth. If you're not related to me, you don't go in there. And all of my daughter's invertebrates are in little displays, and she has some acrylic stuff, and it's pretty cool sitting up on top of the Argus monitor enclosure. Like you're not going to put your hands on them and knock them down or what have you. Yeah. And of course, everything has jewelry locks or sliding locks depending on, style or whatever. Even like I had, like the snake rack and stuff, they're all key lock. My boiga is in an enclosure. I can just take the entire enclosure, and I have, and I set it up on top of our bearded dragon display. And so when I have a walking field trip and I'm to the point where I'm going to explain that, I literally take the entire enclosure down, set it on the table, give my speech. This is what it looks like, blah, blah, blah. Here's the locks. We don't touch it. This is why. And then I take the whole thing, I put it back up. I talk about bearded dragons. Like we don't, the things that are high strung or, you know, a little more stressy, we don't have monkeys around them. So you do, it takes a lot more planning because I don't know them. Like, and you know, you have to have your parents with you, but like, I don't care if they're 3 years old. Like you can bring your kid in, that's fine. It's nothing's going to happen to them. The doors are closed, but that's the kid that's going to like shove over the glass thing with a black widow in it or something stupid. And then it's going to be a nightmare. Right. And so all that stuff has to be, you basically child-proof your collection, even if you don't have kids.
Mm-hmm. How difficult was your city or county with, like, I guess to me it seems like, especially here in Beaufort, thanks to Jeff Lowe from Tiger King, selling the city, or I guess depending on where exactly, because there's a lot of stuff is like, we have the county, we have the city annexes some parts of the county. It's a whole thing. It's very confusing, but I feel like selling them on the idea of something like that, you'd have to basically say, this is what we're projecting this to bring in money wise, you know, during a given summer. Like, it is in your interest to make something like this happen. Like, it is worth it. We're not idiots. Like, we want to be legit. Was it difficult for you to sell that to your local governing body?
No, but we live in a really small town. And so even before we had a facility, like we're the parents that like our kids bring cool stuff for show and tell. I let my tortoise walk around by the elementary school when school got out. Like people knew that we did shows prior to having a facility. So people knew us from that. A big sticking point in our town in particular was they had a bad experience with a pet store. And which is funny because that the governing body has since changed out, but the governing folks at the time, the village board or what have you, were like, we don't want a small pet store here. We had a really bad experience, and we're not. So it wasn't a big deal, but we had to explain to them that, and I still do. I literally had a guy, I was feeding stuff today, and I had a guy knock on the door, and he was like, "Hey, are you interested in carrying cat and dog food?" And I was like, "This isn't a pet store." And he goes, "Oh." And the reason that I say that is the front of our facility is, dear, how big are the windows? 10 by 8, 8 by 8, 10 by 8. They're like 2 10 by 8 panes of glass is the front of my facility. And Teresa wrote in white paint in like 3-foot letters, Reptile Petting Zoo, so that people would stop thinking it's a pet store. The dude walked by a 6-foot tall sign that said Reptile Petting Zoo and asked if I wanted to carry dog food, as if they don't, you know, people don't pay attention. But I am of the mind that like the only thing that we really had to do was we had to be inspected by the fire marshal. There was a fee to have our sign like above the awning type thing. You have to pay extra for that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, insurance, you know, you have to prove that you have insurance and that kind of thing. And I was like, okay. I understand, you know, you don't want a pet store or so on and so forth. You had a bad experience, and that's not what I'm doing anyway. And so no worries. But I'm also the kind of person that was like, well, this dude signed a lease and rented the building to me, so I'm going to put whatever I want in there because I'm paying for that.
Yeah.
Like, as long as there's no ordinance saying like I didn't break a law, you're not going to tell me that I can't do that. Like, that's insane.
Yeah, I think that's an issue that we have down by me in terms of most of the cities, and I'll say most of them because there are some very small cities, and I use finger air quotes, very small cities that are fancy themselves as being the bougiest of bougie. And those small communities, I can imagine them being like, we don't want a reptile showroom. But for the most part, by me, is money talks. So if
Right.
you buy the licenses and you pay for the permits and you have a tax ID number and an LLC, they don't give a crap. And the one thing that I was always concerned with when looking at things like this is the money in terms of the upkeep, because you have to maintain it to look the way that they want it to look, and the hidden ordinances of permitting and licensing. Like, for example, the city that I work in, there's like a business license for the city, but then there's also a reseller's merchant license, basically, so you could sell pre-owned things. So let's say you had like a used clothing store, you would have to have that license, otherwise they shut you down.
Right.
And like little small city nuances, I feel like could be a hiccup, but it's very different by me. It's money talks.
No, 100%. If you were to drive 3 highway exits north of us, same thing. And that weighs very heavily on what we do. So our facility does not make a lot of money. I don't necessarily care about that. Like I don't need it to, as far as the money is concerned. But I know a couple highway exits north, I could print money in that thing on the tourism side, right?
Sure.
The problem is $1 million right out of the gate to set up a facility the way that their town's ordinances will say that it has to be set up.
Right.
And like my facility is not bad. It's nice, but I'm not like an AZA accredited facility.
Yeah.
And those things are essentially written that way to make it so you can't do it.
And it also comes down to rent too, because you could have a great location where you are, you minimal advertising, lots of tourist traffic. You have local school board traffic in terms of field trips and summer camps and all that cool stuff. And you could make a nice little piece of money to keep the facility going, as well as put some cash in your pocket. But none of that matters if rent is $30,000 a month.
Right.
You know what I mean? And a lot of like places by me, that's what it is.
Yeah. Well, so that was the Gurney Mills. It's like a gigantic mall up here. It's like a big deal in the Midwest.
Sure.
They had it wasn't like the franchise Rainforest Cafe, but it was basically a Rainforest Cafe, you know?
Right.
And touristy thing, fish and turtles and frogs and, like a Rainforest Cafe.
Yeah.
And it was cool. Like really nice. They're a little more high end, so they didn't really care for that. And they his lease ended on one end of the mall. They didn't renew it and would only renew his lease on the other end of the mall in an open storefront.
Right.
Same square footage, same, everything was the same.
They just moved them.
We just need you over there. Close the business. He was like, I can't move. Like, because he had, like, I don't know if you guys have a Rainforest Cafe type thing down by
Sure.
Like, like the 10-foot circular aquariums. And looked like Disneyland, dude. Like just crazy equipment.
Yeah.
You're not going to forklift that thing to the other side of the mall. Like, that's not happening. Yeah. And dude was like, well, guess we're done. And now there's an empty Rainforest Cafe in that mall instead of a functional, like nobody else is going to come in and pay to rip out his Rainforest Cafe either.
Right. Exactly.
It's just going to sit there, but they didn't want the weird fish and snake dude in their cool mall. And so that is every part of what Teresa and I do. That is the negative or the downside or whatever, is the people that think it's trashy or whatever. that will always be the downside for this part of doing what we do. Like, because kids are cool, they're super into it. Most teachers are cool. You know, you're going to get like 1s and 2s of kids that are obnoxious or whatever, but like 99% of them are awesome. You know, most parents are cool. It is I don't really know if we want that kind of thing at our club or whatever type of deal, you know.
Sure.
To the point, like our prices are intentionally low because the school district that we live in has a lot of families that are lower income. And so we priced it so that those folks could participate. And that's a big deal to us. And like we participated in the rescue and we do some charity things, and that's important to us. And we have people that like they'll book us and we get there and it's a little weird at first or whatever, and you're not really sure why. And then we do the show, everything's cool, great. Get to the end and they tip us like as much as we charged them. And they're like, you should charge more. I thought you were going to be trashy because you were cheap. And it's like, well, for one, I'm not. It's kind of expensive to have me come to your show, I think, because I'm okay, but I'm not like rich.
Right.
And we do shows in places like I have done shows in houses that look like castles. And it's one of those, like, you pull up in the driveway and you're like, oh, I should have charged this dude more. Like, but I also, like, ethically don't want to be that dude. Like, I don't want to Google Maps your zip code and then pick your price. Like, my price is what my price is. Because I use a booking site to advertise things. If I come to you or if you come to me, either way. So it works for the facility too. And I put the pricing structure in there. So, like, if you can afford that, then just click on it. And if you can't or whatever, like, that's cool. But I don't want you to read that and then I send you a price and you're like, that isn't what that said. And it's like, oh, but you drive a nice car, so I changed it. Like, you can't, you know.
Yeah. Well, so when I worked for Underground, I was doing 3 or 4 events a week for them. And some of them were birthday parties for kids. Some of them were, you know, a high school lecture hall. And the pricing structure I thought was very fair in the sense of keeping it where everyone could afford it. If you really wanted it for your kid's birthday party, you could afford it. But at the same time, it had to be cheap enough that an educational facility like a high school or a summer camp or something, they could afford it.
Yes.
Or let me rephrase it. Not that they could afford it, is that it wasn't too high that it would be over their budget.
Yes.
Right? And what was interesting was the menu was more expensive the farther away it was. So if it was within, if it was within 10 miles of Underground's facility, it was $150, let's just say, for an hour. If it was 20 miles, it'd be 180, you know? But if it was all the way down to Miami, well, now it's instantly 250. It was like, if I have to cross the Dade County line, which is very much oftentimes another country, you better believe we're doubling it, you know, or whatever. And I always thought that was more than fair.
So we do that, but it is actually based on travel, not like because you live in a fancy suburb. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. That's what this was. It was mileage. It was mileage as the crow flies.
Yeah. So I, in my day job, I'm a government employee. And so I literally use the same model that they use to figure out mileage and stuff. And I just tell people, like, you know, there's a rate, an hourly rate for the event. And then you can it's like 52 cents or whatever the thing is. Just Google Maps me to you and you'll know what it is. Like, that has become a much bigger deal now, that fuel prices and things like that. And for the longest time, Teresa and I we didn't factor in, we were kind of dumb. Like, it's hard to figure out what your time and your expenses are worth. Like not necessarily what our
what's your
time
time
was
worth?
worth.
No,
Like
what's your
figured
time
out,
worth?
right. Well, we figured out what our hourly pay would be if we had to drive far away to a show. And it was cool. Like it's less than I make at my day job, but more than she makes at her day job. So whatever, that's cool. The thing became we're in the Midwest, and it sounds kind of bad, but like we're really popular. I'm not trying to be a jerk or whatever, but so like we go from St. Louis to Wisconsin, Iowa to Indiana. Like we do shows literally in the center of the country.
It's a big spread.
Yeah. And we have been really successful in some far flung, like we're very popular in Wisconsin for whatever reason. For a long time, we didn't account for that. So like now, if it's more than like time wise, if it's more than 2 hours, I actually add on to the price because given the vehicle that we use to transport things, it's gonna be a tank of gas, and then if her or I are doing it, we're gonna have to eat because it's too far to go do. Like if I drive 2 hours, do a show, and drive 2 hours back, well, breakfast, lunch, I'm missing one of those meals to do that because it's too much of the chunk of the day.
Right.
And so it started to be like weird expense things that you weren't thinking about. Like, well, I'm making this much an hour, like that's cool. And then you're doing, paying gas or like doing my bills for the month or whatever. And I'm like, this just doesn't look right. And it's like, well, yeah, man, you got to eat and like get gas.
And not even that. We always use gas as the example because we're constantly depleting it and resupplying it, right? But wear and tear on tires, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Air filters for the vehicle,
transmissions.
Not that specific, but yeah, the actual wear and tear on the vehicle, wear and tear on temporary enclosures and transport vessels.
Oh yeah, well, dude, just like the number of oil
bins.
changes that we do a year on the van is not what it would be if that was just our family vehicle. You know what I mean? Like in my day job, I live 80 miles from my office. Wow. And so I commute in a Prius. But my car that I use for work has less miles than our van. And they're the same year. Like,
wow.
We do some moving for reptiles. And so like you have to account for stuff like that. But that also goes back to having that facility of I will make a lot of price concessions, kind of work it out if you'll come to me. Because dude, you cut 90% of my expenses. Then it really is just my time because, like I got to clean up or you want to do a cake or whatever, like that kind of thing. But like that part of it, yes, it's your time and you really should account for what your time is worth. But it's pretty cool that like I just hang out at people's birthday. Like that's if you're coming to my facility with our animal collection, we're hanging out, and I do a reptile show, which I like doing anyway, and then I get free cupcakes, and then I have to take out the garbage. Like that's not that bad of a job, like it's still work, but
yeah.
You could be the magician and have to really sell it.
Right.
God forbid the clown. Ugh.
That one you just got to dress up and scare kids. That one's just as easy.
But yeah, that totally makes sense. It does.
But
no, what's crazy is that when we were talking about this before the show about how we were going to talk about this, none of these things that we're talking about now is what I was thinking we were going to talk about. So this is even better.
Dude, the facility thing, aside from money, it's very expensive. Straight up, it's very expensive to have a facility. It just is. It isn't that hard, man. Like our family life is different because of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it also just is our family life. Like my kids before school turn on shop lights or whatever. But my son is also really into the turtles. And so he likes to go feed the turtles and clean filters and do whatever.
Right.
All those invertebrates that are sitting in there are Indy. That's her big thing, you know. And like my oldest daughter, she was kind of into ball pythons for a little bit. She is more of she likes to cuddle things and hang out. And she was into the teaching thing. And as she became an older teen, she thinks little kids are annoying now. And so she's kind of struggling with that of whether or not she wants to help at stuff.
Well, that's also like, I was just going to say your son, like he's all into the turtles and everything now, but there will be a time when the hormones kick in and
sure, 100%.
That stuff gets backburnered. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So,
and it's one of those things where like there is major cost associated with it, but none of the rest of it was hard, man. Like we're very lucky in that Teresa and I, we like to build stuff. We enjoy the DIY stuff. We were talking about getting the BlackBox, and then I hang out with Mike Stefani, and so I want to use Zoopoxy on it, and we're very into that part of it, and so that actually saves us a lot of money. Right. Because if I wanted to have the facility that we have and have the species that we have, and then I had to just purchase all of those enclosures and things, we probably would not be able to afford that, because we keep really big stuff. Size for us, it's not, there's lights and things, there's costs associated with that. But like it's, if you're going to buy a prefab enclosure to fit a pair of Argus monitors, like, or I could just buy a new car. Like you're going to run into like major expenses, and like we have friends in the zoo industry, and that is a huge part of their cost. Is when you go to the zoo, it's beautifully landscaped. It's set up in a certain way. It's a PR campaign, right? It's set up in a way to make you interested in it, because realistically, you're taking your kid there because they wanted to hear about polar bears or whatever. You don't actually care. You just want to walk around and have a nice time. And so like 90% of their budget is landscaping, just to make the place look nice, so you'll hang out. Yeah. And then you especially if you're from up here, you go to Brookfield Zoo, you go into the reptile section. It's a building from like the 1940s. Like they just got cool enclosures, and it's because people donated stuff. Like it's not set up that way because it's
$35 t-shirts don't cut it anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if we are very fortunate that we enjoy it, but are also pretty good at it, and that saves us a lot of expense.
Yeah. You also think about this too, is that I don't know how many exhibits you have, for lack of a better synonym, but you and your wife have a very good, what's the word I'm looking for? You guys have the freedom because you're a government employee and you only work so many hours a week, because she's a teacher and she only works, she has X amount of holidays and summers or whatever. You guys can get in there way more. If I was going to try and do what you're doing, I physically couldn't. I would have to quit my job, and that would have to become my full-time job. It would.
Right. Yeah. If I were single, and given my career is a little different, but like the level of automation and things that I would need to accomplish that without having a partner, without having the kid, like it would be crazy. It would be possible just because of the equipment and stuff that's available to us now, but the expense would be astronomical. Like I love, Govies and all, Miss King, and we have some of the coolest stuff now available in the hobby where you could literally automate a jungle.
Dude,
it's amazing.
Bluetooth power strips.
Right.
And
so it is feasible, but you would significantly add to the cost.
Right.
And it, that matters
it
for a
does,
lot of folks.
It helps a lot too with your kids, because we make the joke about, the kid's free labor, but you're interacting with your kid who's interested in this. It's a bonding moment. You're having fun, and you're getting some of the work done, so it's double edged
for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, and that, like even for like something like building enclosures, like they paint them, or, they drew the inside the giant iguana enclosure. I didn't do fake plants. They painted the walls, and like Teresa painted trees with the kid. Like, it's what we do now as a family. And so that's a huge difference maker, in that, like, this isn't my thing. And then I'm trying to, like, I got to make time for my wife and make time for my kids, and also do all the rest of this crap. Like, no, we all go do stuff, and then we come home and do home stuff. And, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're not shoving it down your kid's throat either. They're interested in it. We always make that joke about, our parents had to walk uphill both ways in the snow. My dad used to tell me stories when I grew up on a farm, and, when he was a kid, it was a dairy farm at that time, and he had to go out and he had to plow snow, or like by hand with a hand plow, or he had to, throw bales onto an elevator into a silo. And like, he had to. It's not that he liked farming. He had to. At least in your scenario, your children love this stuff. You love this stuff, and you get to do it together. And that helps immensely, I'm sure.
For sure. And there are definitely still, like, hey, you need to go water all the plants. Like, there's still kids.
Kids are
and
kids.
So, like,
sure.
But the fact that they are actually interested, like, I don't have to tell Indy, what to do with tarantulas. Like, she read up, she knows. I'm there, and, like, making sure, some of the slings aren't scooting off or whatever, but, like, she knows to feed stuff, she knows to water stuff. She's still 13, so every now and again you got to be like, hey man, for real, water them. Like, but it definitely is not, like a family restaurant where you have to be a waitress because we can't afford. It's not like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The feather leg got loose. I don't know where it went.
Right. Yeah. We've definitely had some. How about I rehouse that, and then you do the next one?
Dad, there's a Usambara in the powder room.
Yeah. There's a reason that all of the invertebrates are at the shop and not in our home. So that's a thing.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Yeah.
Me and Jake think that if we did something, it would do well. Just given that Beaufort is a very touristy place. There's a lot of out-of-towners, especially this time of year. There's really nothing nearby like it, except for like the Charleston Aquarium, I guess. I don't know. It's something we kind of talked ourselves out of it, I guess, because we're like, this is going to be
way more people
expensive and tough,
we'll
do it.
Well, way more people will be into it than you will know. So, what? How do I say that? What I'm like, way more people Facebook stalk me than I knew, and so, like, I'll go to big public events, right? And people will just come out of the woodwork, and like, they know the names of my stuff, or like when I walk around NARBC, people know. I mean, big red beard, whatever. Like, people know, and like, it's always a funny thing for Teresa. Like, she usually has some kind of color in her hair, and people are like, oh, hey, yeah, you're the people that do the whatever. Like, it is much more popular than I think people let on. And our town is weird. It's small. It's very old, and there are a lot of people that are like that little old lady that is, oh, that's so nice. You have snakes. Just stay over there, and that's gross or whatever.
Yeah.
But then, like, so like my mom is that person. My mom does not like this stuff. She has only ever pet like 2 reptiles. She does not do this stuff. However, she sells my crap to more people than, oh, my son's got a zoo. He's got all this stuff.
I
don't
hate it,
ever
but
go.
you would probably love it. You should check it.
Yeah, dude, she does it all the time. It's super gross. Your kids would love it.
Nice.
That's
nice.
And I'm like, that's not how you sell stuff. Stop doing that.
But it works.
Yeah, because all the grandmas that are her age are the same way. They're like, oh, that's really gross. But yes, I'm sure my grandson would love it. You know, and I thought, and I still do to some extent, like I'm very paranoid about, I clean the place like a nut job before people come to it. It probably more than I necessarily need to, because I'm always worried that we're already the reptile people. Like, I'm already a bald dude with a beard and tattoos. I'm already that guy in our town. You know, our kids hunt and do like combative sports, and we're already those people. And so if they show up here and there's like dirt on the floor, they're going to be like, oh, of course there is, because it's the freaking reptile people. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And
I'm
then there's
really
also
paranoid of that.
There's also a group of, I don't want to say the wrong slur, but a group of what I would jovially call reptilian Karens, where they're herpers, guys, girls, whatever, and typically millennials, and they will see some urates in a cage at a zoo and file a complaint. And it's like, look, man, you know what it's like because you have your own collection at home. Why you got to be that guy?
Because they're pristine. Because they would have cleaned
pristine. You know, and like I joke with Billy Hunt about this all the time, because when Casey and I go to visit, he's always like, oh, my cages are so dirty. And they're not. They're like immaculate. Billy's just OCD about that stuff. But I know that if I'm having guests, I want it to look tip top, as if I'm being inspected by Fish and Wildlife. But like, if you guys came over and there was urates in the cage, like, I don't care, because you guys know that's part of it. Like, you can't get them all the time, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
So, but when you have it open to the public and you have a group of individuals come through and you don't know who necessarily is part of that party, it's got to be pristine. And that can be a lot.
Oh, yeah. Especially, dude, like, you know, we have cyclura, we have uromastic, we have things that snot salt all over the glass. You know, like, I'm that dude that, like, there's pictures on the Facebook of like Indy is sitting inside the Argus enclosure with Windex, just like scrubbing crap because somebody was coming over. And yeah, because it was stupid. It was like dusty or whatever. And it's like, well, yeah, there's a 50-inch dirt lizard in there. It's probably dusty. But I was like, no, they need to be able to see through, like, it's low iron glass, like scrub it, you know? Yeah. And so then my kid's in there sitting on a lizard.
I want kids to run into it thinking that it's open.
What's up?
So I want kids to run into the glass thinking that it's open.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Because then, because if you, my big thing is iguanas. Iguanas are terrible for it. Because I feel like then I spend half of the event like, oh, it's because then I explain salt sneezes, and I give that lesson like 14 times, because every person that walks by and they're like, why is your glass all dirty? And it's like, no. Here's why. I'm not a slob. It's actually this lizard.
First of all, don't worry about it.
He's just going to keep doing it, you know?
It's none of your business.
Yeah, shut your mouth, kid. What you know about uromastic sneezing?
Well, and that's the thing, too, is it isn't always adults that are being snotty. Sometimes it's kids, and they're kids. So they're like...
They say the darndest things.
Yeah. Well, and... So we also have quite a few animals that came from the rescue, and we purposely use them, and we, tell their story and so on and so forth. And they are kind of beat up because they came through the rescue route. And dude, kids call that out all the time. Like, that one doesn't have a toe, or that looks weird, or because they look weird, And then it works because for us, it's a segue into, oh, well, here's why, and he wasn't taken care of, and this is what happened, and blah, blah, blah. But if the kid says that, and then his mom is one of those people, and they turn around and are like, oh my God, it doesn't have a toe. Like what? And then now they're on Twitter. Like, this jackass with no, yeah, yes, exactly. It's not dirty. He just likes to sneeze. But that's always the worry, man, is like, I'm going to be on Facebook, and because especially a lot of the events that we do, people constantly take pictures and everybody posts it to social media. And then I'm always that idiot that's like holding a tegu and it looks all jacked up. And it's like, well, yeah, because this tegu, and I'm telling her story to the birthday party.
Right.
But the picture that's on Instagram is me holding a jacked up tegu.
Yep.
And they're like, well, this jackass, like, what is,
Have you ever had someone say, hey man, that's my tegu. My mom got mad at me in college and gave it away.
So
give him back.
Yeah, that happened to us several years ago with a very large albino Burmese python, and it was not a good situation. There's an elderly man, like maybe 1 or 2 highway exits south of us. He was an elderly veteran, and I am as well, and so people knew both of us through that avenue, and we're like, hey, I know you do exotic animal stuff. This dude, the VFW, so forth. Can you help him out? I'm like, yeah, man, whatever. We go over there, and his house is destroyed. He says there's a python loose upstairs. It ended up being a ball in a 20 long, so no big deal. I got it. And he can't really get around. And in the living room is what did he say? He said something crazy like 14 feet, and it was not. But it'll kill you, all the old stereotype things. And it was an 8-foot albino berm, ratchet strapped instead of a 55-gallon aquarium.
Really?
And his kids, one of his kids, and their significant other, trashed this dude's house while they were living with him and left those in there. And, they're in terrible condition, and, just all of the stereotypical rescue reptile things. So we get it, and it's hungry. So I feed this thing, fatten it up, and it's just a derpy albino berm, right? I have that albino berm. It's like almost 13 feet long now. It's kind of fat and eats rabbits. Like, it's just, they're not that smart. Like, they're albino berms. There's a reason everybody uses a big yellow snake. But anyway, we are at another town, not his town and not my town, some other town. We're at their 4th of July, public, what have you. I'm sitting there, and I sit on the ground with big snakes and set them on me, and then I'll hold the head and you can look at the tail, and we'll just sit on the ground together. That's how I hang out with little kids, because I'm a bigger dude and I don't want to scare them. And so I'm just sitting there, like literally in the middle of this town, this 4th of July thing on the ground with this big old snake on me, and this crazy looking lady comes walking up and is like, baby. And I thought she was talking to me. And I was like, nope, not this guy. Like, A, I'm married, and B, not you and not here, right? And just crazy. Nope, she was talking about that snake. And I was like, I don't think so, man. Like, it was a rescue situation. We're not really sure about his info, And then I saw like other connected people to that situation. And then somebody walked off to the side and they're talking to Teresa and they're like, yo, hey, yeah, that's the people. And I was like, that's cool. Let's put the berm away and get out an iguana instead. And just like lock that thing in the van with the air conditioning on. And then, yeah, 100%. Like that's very rare. Most people, that unfortunately in the rescue side of it really is kind of the throwaway pet thing. Folks usually drop it and forget it. We've actually had some really positive things of that, of like elderly people that had stuff for a super long time and then literally couldn't care for it because they were elderly. And then they have come like to the, like I have some geckos and stuff, and like they've come to the shop and are like, I recognize those spots. That's my leopard gecko. And we have 10. So I'm like, yeah, for sure it is. It definitely is, like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. Oh man, that's crazy. At least it panned out for the better,
Could have been worse.
For sure. Well, and like I have a monster beauty snake that came to us from that route. It was the woman. She had it. Oh man, I've had it for almost 3 years, and she had it for like 15 or 16 before it got to me. And she was in her 70s. Wow. And came to the it was the coolest thing ever, man. She had an adult, and I had that as well, and that it eventually passed. But she had an adult black-tailed crebo and an adult beauty, and those were her two snakes. And she was literally a tiny in her 70s grandma, came in like decked out enclosures, like monster colubrids. She had like a snake hook. Like she knew everything. Oh yeah, this, that, this is where it's from. This is what I got. I got it. This, all these things, and it's this old and da da da. But I kind of can't get around X, Y, and Z. And I was like, I don't care. That's awesome. That snake is bigger than you are, you tiny old lady. Like, there are some positives.
She was the swimsuit model, in Myrtle Beach circa 1952 with the indigo around her neck,
So I have one for that too. You say that.
Nice.
One of my really good friends where I work, he is from Northwest Indiana, and and I'm not being derogatory, he is from a circus family, an actual one.
And Connies.
And
circus folk, nomads, smell like cabbage, small hands.
Yeah, like legit. And his one part of his family are gypsy, and so like legit circus folk. And when you walk into my shop, there are 2 framed pictures right inside the door, and they are his mother and his grandmother in the whole tasseled regalia, dancing with snakes. And they're black and white pictures. And he's a coworker of mine, but he's like my dad's age, so significantly older. And so obviously his mother and grandmother are as well. And they are black and white pictures from the carnival days. That is in the entrance of our facility.
That's awesome.
Our legit snake dancing carnies.
I love it. That's awesome. Super cool.
And yeah, Dom's in the chat, another rescue worker. She has some unique stories as well.
Yeah, I don't have any interest in doing that kind of stuff, man.
It's pretty rough, dude. It sucks. I got
nothing but beardies and balls.
I thought that I wanted to, and because in my mind it wasn't. I got like a flipper's mentality, but I wasn't going to sell them. I was just going to rehome them to friends that kept herps,
Sure.
And so right after Fish and Wildlife of Florida started doing the Reptiles of Concern license, when big snakes were just becoming taboo, I signed up for an adoption program. And the way that they formulated it was you had to already have the license. And then people that wanted to essentially amnesty their animal, they didn't have to go to, the Miami Zoo on Amnesty Day and surrender it. They could make contact with someone like myself. We'd make arrangements. I would take the animal from them and then do whatever I got to do with it. Mm-hmm. And I had signed up, and it was about 6 months. And I never got a phone call or an email or nothing. And then this woman shows up at I was living with my parents at the time. This woman shows up at my parents' house with a 8-foot green anaconda. She's like, this is my son's. He went to the army and I don't want it anymore, and just dumped it on me. And I was like, what? This is not what I signed up for. How did you find where I live? She's like, well, I went to the Fish and Wildlife and all of your information was there. And I was like, fuck that. And I took myself off that thing, off that list, that roster. And yeah, they had everything.
But I've changed my mind.
So the rescue that we participated in was also, it was run out of someone's home. And that, I mean, that's a huge part of it, is that, and it really depends on, you know, your state and things like that, of how heavily involved in it they are. We're really lucky that, you know, the state herpetologist for Illinois is very hands-on. He's very involved. He's actually a herper. Like he breeds tricolor hognose. Like he's actually cool.
That's awesome.
Not the regulatory person that you would think. And so he was very good about, hey, this is somebody's house. Like, don't be doing, you know, he put the info out. But there were a lot of instances, you know, like the amnesty thing that you're talking about, in Illinois, because we have pretty strict rules. Like they would get weird stuff. And like, so some box turtles are endangered in our state, and they put a higher priority on things that are endangered as opposed to things that could be potentially dangerous. And so our rescue president at one time had an ornate box turtle and a 4-foot alligator that came through amnesty, and the conservation police came to her house and took the box turtle first, and the gator was there for almost a week. And because the legal priority is endangered species because they're native to here, that the other animal was an amnesty animal due to our policies, but it had nothing to do with the wildlife of Illinois. It was a dangerous type of thing. And so what was important to them is not necessarily what was important to us.
Right.
And you are kind of forced to work in that framework, you know?
Yeah. Jeez. Wow.
But no, it sounds daunting, and I don't know. It's just, it's a lot easier than you think it is, given your understanding of the ordinances, you know, and rules for where you live. Right. The only thing I tell people is that it's very expensive, and that is it's kind of an uncomfortable conversation to have with people sometimes. Like, because I don't like, there's not like, it always sounds bad when you say like, whatever. I make a lot of money at my job, and so I have that facility, and if it doesn't make me any money, I don't actually care. Like, I can afford to do that.
Sure.
But like our shows, I want those to make money, but I do that because I want to educate people about reptiles, and because I am able. And it's more like,
you were born to do this, and if the money that you make off of doing it helps keep the collection going and helps educate people, that's the sole goal.
Yeah, like it to me is more like service industry. Like it's provide, like I want to teach people this stuff, and I am happy that the show, I can do the shows and I don't have to spend my own money to teach people stuff. Like, that's nice. But when it comes to the facility, if I didn't make, if I just blocked out the front of that and didn't let people in there, monetarily I could afford to do that.
Sure.
It would kind of suck, because
of course, but
I don't want to just give up money. But
it's that famous adage of, if you're going to be a rescue and you're going to take animals in to rescue them, you need to be prepared to keep that animal alive for the remainder of its life in a good, healthy, ethical life. You know, and that's like, we always talk about Steve's snaketuary, and how if he can rehome something, he will, but he will start off he assumes that he's not going to.
Right.
And that way, if the animal is in his care, it's got to be taken care of for the rest of its life.
Well, and that, when our facility, so being involved in the rescue side of it really altered that part of our facility, because the part that we provided was we would do shows and stuff to help like fundraise and different things. We'd outreach for them and that kind of stuff, which is super cool. It's a blast. And then on the rescue side, we would use some animals like as ambassador animals of, hey, this is what MBD is, why these things are important, and actually teach lessons around that. But a big part of what we did, especially when it came to licensing and the state and things, was the amnesty of very large and sometimes dangerous animals. And so for us, like, I don't know, it's cool. Like if Dwight, I live in a town called Dwight, they do walking field trips. If every third grade, since I have lived here, every single third grade class that has gone through that elementary school has come to my place. And I think that's amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's cool.
That's pretty
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, we're going on like 12 years. But if we never do that again, I have 2 sulcata tortoises that need a place to live. I have 2 American alligators. I have a caiman. I have very large monitor lizards. I have a rhinoceros iguana, a green. Like, I have very large, very long-lived animals that I am obligated to provide for a very long time. And so if they called tomorrow and were like, yo, we don't want to do field trips for you anymore, dude, I'll black out the front windows. I don't care. I'll just hang out with giant lizards. Like, that's my place. That's cool. So it kind of has to be the balance. Like, it sucks when it feels like work sometimes, but you can't have a collection the size of our collection and not have it feel a little bit like work. We just have so many. Like, and I am okay with, like, I got to change waters. Like, true. Because about halfway through it, I'm always like, you know how freaking amazing it is that I have this many, like, it puts it, I never get so like changing out super worms. Like, I never get so down on it that I'm just like, this stupid job. It always starts out like, man, I'm tired and I didn't change up to gecko food or whatever. I need to go do that. And then I get there and I'm like, I walk in the basement to go change out the crested gecko food, and I walk by 850-gallon troughs with like 14 turtle species and an alligator snapper that's the size of a garbage can, and there's a gator in the corner. I just got, there's a 300-gallon trough with 900 pounds of dirt in it and a gopher tort, like, just ridiculous crap that people aren't supposed to have in their basement. And I'm like, nah, it's cool. I'll change out gecko food, whatever. Like,
I go through something similar where it's like, I get in a funk, I'm tired from work. I'm mentally drained, and I know that I've got some poo ahead of me, and I'm like, oh, I got to go do it. And I muster up the energy and I go. And the minute I start getting into it, and it reminds you, like, this is what we do. This is our life. This is our love. This is our passion, and it makes any kind of like annoyance I had is gone. Because I remind myself, like, look what I have in my hands. This is amazing. So I totally understand where you're coming from. I do.
But you are right for a hobbyist to have a separate place, or like it can add that stress of feeling like work. And I'm in that weird place where I'm not a full-time reptile person, and so it still feels hobbyist to me. But the reality is, with a facility like we have in a collection like ours, like, we're hobbyists. That we're and I make fun of Teresa all the time about it, because the permitting and things are hers. And I tell her, I'm like, you're not a hobbyist. Like, you're a licensed, insured professional.
Yeah, literally.
And she's like, well, I'm like, nah, man. Like, you have a crocodilian permit, an endangered species permit, special use animal permit in the state of Illinois. Like, you are a zoological professional. licensed and accredited.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Literally.
I guess so. I'm like, how do you sound bummed out? Like, that's super cool.
Yeah, right. It's good. It's awesome. It's why we do it, man. It's why we do it. So, Smitty, is there anything else you want to touch base on, Bubba?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I just rambled. Did you guys have like specific questions?
No,
I know
this
somebody
is
earlier was asking about challenges and stuff in the chat. I kind of glossed over. I'm sorry.
No, I think that we covered more than I was expecting. And in my mind, we covered pretty much everything that I wanted to touch base on. So this is great. I love how we pulled into some of the rescue stuff too. I think that's awesome. And, you know, the public aspect is a very unique hurdle, but I feel like for the right people, it's a hurdle that's completely worth jumping over.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
100%. So
yeah,
yeah.
Like and it does. And actually, I had messaged you guys about that a little bit. That there at one time was discussion of trying to create some kind of framework for educators to use, and then maybe approaching not really a governing body, but a body like USARC that we all look to and try to figure something out like that. And I need to work more on that, but that is a big part of it is, and I don't know, like that sounds snobby, but like it needs to be the right people. Like I feel like we all kind of make fun of the same YouTube people, right? Like that's a big thing. Like, we make fun of ball python people and then we make fun of YouTube people. And like some of the social media type people, the reason that there's sort of that visceral reaction to kind of make fun of them, or we don't like the content they put out, is because we feel like, you know, the public is going to look at free handling, or the public is going to look at a dangerous or irresponsible situation and then judge us or make laws and do all these things. And
they do. It's fact.
They 100%. And that's an absolutely valid concern. My thing is, doing what I do is not necessarily more, but I feel like equally important. Like, we had an educator in this area that had a girl get bit at a show, and a lot of us use the same style and groupings of insurance, and it jeopardized everyone because of that, because it actually is incredibly rare. I will say that, like, I am insured by these folks, so I'm privy to their statistics, and how they charge me is based on whether or not these bad things happen. And the bad things happening are actually very rare, which is fantastic. But that means that when they do, and it was because this person did something that they shouldn't have done, those institutions like insurance and like regulatory bodies tend to overreact, because it's kind of like your out of sight, out of mind thing, like you said. And like, they're insuring me. They know that there's risk and liability, but nothing bad has ever happened. And so Bill and Teresa are fantastic. So if there is a day where the bad thing happens, is it just going to be like a regular fender bender, or are you going to charge me like I totaled my car? Because it's such a rarity, you know.
Right.
And it turned out that when that particular instance happened, I mean, there was real consideration for like, hey, maybe we don't want to insure this kind of thing anymore. And
they might actually have to pay out.
and like, if that lady called me and said, hey, we can't insure you anymore, I'm done. Like, the way that our state is set up, I cannot function without that. And that had nothing to do with me. I don't even like that guy. Like, I knew he was a screw up before this happened. You know, like, it's the exact same thing as, you know, we talk about YouTube and we talk about social media and things, and all of us kind of have, when I said that, everybody in the chat you all had pictures in your brain, and it's probably the same handful of people for various reasons. And our doing shows and things that we do is the same way. When somebody's like, oh, hey, this bad thing happened, and now my insurance lady's calling me, and it's like, oh man, it was like these 2 or 3 people, I'm telling you. And then my insurance lady calls me, and it definitely was, and it can, if you are a social media person and you do something dangerous or irresponsible or what have you, at least kind of how we talk, especially with you guys being way more into the hot things than I am, a lot of times it's concern for that person's well-being. Like that person is going to make a mistake and injure themselves. It usually isn't a concern with another person from a lot of the things that I see. It's that they do risky behaviors that endanger them.
Yeah,
whereas
I don't care about them at all.
Yeah, and that's a. I see what you're saying.
The news and
Right.
the bad light and things. Like if they're going to do something stupid, that's 100% on them. I do not care if they get bit. That is their fault. They deserve it.
If someone wants to light themselves on fire in their automobile, I shouldn't have my car taken away.
Right. But that's always been our concern, or how it's framed, right? Is the people who are in that vein of social media are like, oh, well, it's my health, it's my safety, and it's, you shouldn't tell me. And then all of us are like, no, man, I'm fine with you doing stupid things. Just don't do a stupid thing in public so I get in trouble for it. Right. But if they get hurt, like if they get hurt free handling, they get envenomated, and now you guys are going through all sorts of things, especially in a state like Florida, and there's tons of stuff going on, right? You at least have, and this kind of sounds terrible, but you at least have the argument of, man, that's a responsible adult that did something they shouldn't have done. That ain't on me. They hurt themselves in their own deal.
You're right.
I don't have that. That's irrelevant, because a person who does what I do hurt a member of the public. And so it's just a different framework of like, now, like I am responsible. Like we go to shows with thousands of people. Anybody there gets, like, we did a school maybe a month ago and had a little girl, and there were some special needs kids in the class, and we do tons of special needs shows because of tactile things with reptiles. And there was a little girl there, and she went to the teacher, and she said that something stung her, and she thought, and was one of the reptiles. And the teacher was like, no, that, they were smooth, and we had a lesson on smooth things. And it stung me, and da da da. The teacher came to me and was like, hey, can you explain to her again that we touched the python and it was very velvety and smooth and it didn't sting her and what have you? I'm like, yeah, for sure. Explain the whole thing, and the girl's like, oh, okay, cool. She was fine. Nothing had happened. She just didn't understand, given her disability, and she had made this thing. She just verbalized that it had stung her. And the teacher's like, okay, cool, thanks, da da da. And so we're packing up to go, and that was kind of like the last thing that we did was explain to her. And so the teacher comes over. Hey, I really appreciate you doing that. I'm like, yeah, man, we do a lot of special needs stuff. Like, it's cool, it's fine. No, you don't understand. If that girl would have gone home and said that something here stung her, now I'm going to have, like, her parents are going to show up.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have to prove that something didn't sting her.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't have to prove, like, you can't just look at her hand and be like, there's
train
no
wreck
hole.
avoided.
Like, you need to now prove that what this kid said happened didn't happen. And in my show, we do a presentation of an emperor scorpion underneath of a blacklight. Now, it's Illinois, and that animal has venom, and so it never leaves the enclosure. It's covered and sealed and so on and so forth, and you can't ever touch it. But I would have had a little girl who is special needs, at-risk population. She would have gone home. She would have told her mom and dad, I got stung, so on and so forth. Oh, what happened at school today? Well, that school, they're like kind of boutique, sort of. They have a really active Facebook and Instagram. So you could have gone right on there and seen my stupid face with a glow-in-the-dark scorpion and your at-risk daughter who just said she got stung. And now I'm that moron on the 7 o'clock news. And it's totally different than Bill Bradley was at home today and got stung by an emperor scorpion because he's a moron and has a bruise in his arm now. Well, no, I tried to kill a 7-year-old special needs girl. It's a totally different news story.
Right.
Like
exactly.
It really changes the lens when you're not some idiot holding a rattlesnake. You got tagged. Hey, man, suck it up. You're stupid. You know, that's not the same as I threw a scorpion at a kid, you know, like.
But I will say this. It falls back on Steve Rinnella's cute and cuddly theory of this scorpion with a child where the kid didn't even touch it is far less likely to cause a legislation change than someone on YouTube with a bazillion followers doing horrible things
matters
outside.
For sure.
In outside in nature where things could get loose or whatever. So
absolutely. And that has been a part of it as well, is we and I know this doesn't have anything to do with the facility, sorry. We have done shows at like really big stuff, like comic conventions. This is like the C2E2 here in Chicago. It's something like 25,000 people a day or just some insanity. And it's on TV and it's you know, it's a big thing. And some of the zoo charity and outreach things that we do, like that I was on the front page of some newspaper that I don't even know. And there was a 17-foot retic in my lap. And it was my luck that lady chose to talk to me, because the curator of that zoo, when they were taking their pictures and stuff, he stopped her and was like, "Hey, you should talk to Bill and Teresa about what they're doing there." Because prior to that, she ended up being a nice lady. I don't think she was going to write something ridiculous, but I have no idea. It could have, there was just a picture on the front page of the newspaper and it's some goober with a gigantic snake. Like, I don't have any control over what that person is going to say I was doing. We were on the front page of our newspaper in this town, Teresa and me, with Blue Tegu and the Argus monitor. And the dude wrote that we had a Komodo dragon. IDNR called me and was like, "Yo,
like,
do you know that you are in the paper as having a Komodo? Like, what is going on?" And I was like, "No, man, you've been here. Like, that's not something I could hide, for one thing."
Yeah.
And you saw my Argus monitor. Like, that, he obviously just wrote the wrong thing. And they're like, "Yo, you need to get that fixed. Like, they need to write a retraction and you need to get it fixed. Like, you publicized in the state of Illinois in a publication in a newspaper that you have something you can't have."
You're kidding.
And I was like, I didn't publicize anything. Like, that dude took my picture and wrote something wrong. I didn't write that. And they're like, "It really needs to get fixed because, you know, people call them and ask." Do you guys remember Chance the Snapper? That whole thing with the gator that was in the pond and it going down to Florida. Anyway.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
So that it made like national news. Some idiot released a gator up here. And that's what happened and blah, blah, blah. IDNR got a FOIA request. They want to know everybody in Illinois that's got a crocodilian permit and where they live. Because did it live next to that?
Someone has to answer for it.
Is it me living next to that pond? And now where's my gator? Right. And IDNR was already doing, like, they called and they verified they did the right thing. But that was just a member of the public. They were like, "Yo, here, I filled out a FOIA request. I want to know where everybody in the state of Illinois is that has a crocodilian permit." And he had to tell them. He was like, "Hey, man, I know it's not your house, but I had to tell people that, you know, your facility has a crocodilian, just so you know." And because it was in the news. And that, well, how many people have this crazy thing? We're all the rest of these lunatics with the alligator. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I wasn't even in this country when that happened. Like, I was one of the people they were calling to ask if I could come help try to get the stupid thing out. And I was like, I'm not in the United States, so thank God. Please don't call me again for that.
Yeah. Crazy times we live in, boys. Crazy times.
Indeed.
Well, closing remarks, gentlemen.
Back a little bit in the chat, somebody said they enjoyed the Xenogama episode, so thank you for that.
Yeah, right on.
It was really awesome. I like talking to Philip. He's a super good dude. So
yeah, man, Marcus got some stuff from him and tip-top specimens. Awesome stuff. So
all right. Well, this episode was brought to you by BlackBoxCages.com. Check them out. Cages, racks of all shapes and sizes. Give them a follow on Facebook and Instagram. And then the fine folks at Puget Sound Pythons, please give them a follow as well. Looks like they said Reptile News Radio is on hiatus at the moment. Let me go back. They're taking a break from Reptile News Radio, trying to find a way to balance life, reptiles, and the podcast. I feel you there. It's a lot to juggle.
For sure.
So, we'll be back. I think so. THP isn't happening Thursday, but we are going to do it sometime this week. I don't know. I don't think it's going to be Wednesday. It might be Friday. So it is going to happen. It's just not going to happen Thursday night because Jake has some other thing going on. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a one-on-one. We've got some other stuff sort of in the works, lining some people up that are going to be really, really good, and I'm pretty excited about. So
awesome.
We will catch everybody later.
Yeah. Happy Passover to everyone. Happy Easter to everyone. Remember, just because they're cute and cuddly, yellow baby Burmese pythons do not make good Easter presents. FYI.
Oh, no.
Yes. Stick to the bunnies.
I don't know if those are really any better.
That was a joke. It's for you to feed to your Burmese python.
I was going to say, if you run out of space for the bunnies, I can help you out there.
Nice.
He's accepting donations.
Yes. All right, guys.
Good night.
Bye.